I will let people in as they come in. For those of you who don't know me, though I think most of you do, I'm Lisa with Recruiting for Growth. And actually, that is my brief introduction. Everything else I'm handing over to Shary and let you take it away. And you had said you're going to talk for a little while and then open it up for questions.
I'll talk 20 minutes and assuming I don't get too verbose, I'll open it up for questions and answers the last 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay,
So come
and I will
prepared
keep
with
my
your questions.
I'll keep my eye on chat as well, just in case not everybody is able to be here.
Oh, that's a good thought. Thanks, Lisa.
You bet. So I'll let you take it away.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Shary Raske, and for those of you who don't know me, I am a career strategist with a business called Courageous Change, and I help people in transition, particularly folks that have experienced unexpected job loss. And one of the reasons I got interested in resilience was to help people process that rug being pulled out from underneath them. But in addition, I've experienced trauma myself, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then introduced 6 concepts that are designed to bring post-traumatic strength, post-traumatic growth. This is going to be a low-tech presentation, and I would really appreciate it if each of you would grab a sheet of paper that is like 8.5 by 11, and we're going to be physically working with this. So pen and paper, no tablet, no laptop, grab a piece of paper. And while you're all doing that, let me begin with a story, then I'll introduce the concepts, and then I'll open it up for questions. I was 15 years old, home alone, with the exception of my great-grandmother, who had come to live with us because of her advanced age. And I did not like her. She was a retired Pentecostal preacher woman, and she was really overly exuberant in terms of what I was doing wrong. And so I stayed as far away from her as possible. One evening, I was talking to my friend, Evelyn Ryan, on the phone, and I am proof positive that you should never talk on the phone when it's a landline during a thunderstorm. And we had gotten so involved in our conversation, I didn't even hear the storm coming until the room filled with light. There was this crashing, sonic sounding boom that shook the entire house. My body was forced into a fetal position and then released me, and I flew across the room. I was hurt. Yet I instinctively knew what to do, and I crawled on my hands and my knees until I got into the next room, and I fell into my great-grandmother's arms, and I sobbed hysterically until I calmed down. 6 to 8 weeks after that, I was still supercharged. I couldn't touch a toaster without getting a shock. Couldn't touch the top of a stove without getting a shock. Anything metal that was plugged in, I'd get a shock. It wasn't until I was in my 50s that I found the right resource for me to repair the neurological damage that had happened that day. But the trauma that I experienced was one of many that I've had over my life. And we can't get through life without suffering. We can't get through life without unexpected events. And now I'd like you to get out that 8.5 sheet of paper, and on the far right side of the piece of paper, I would like you to write these 6 words. And you want to space them off so it fills up the entire page up and down. So just think about 2 or 3 fingers of space between each of these words. The first word is social. Second word is physical. The third word is emotional. Fourth word is cognitive. Fifth word is fiscal. And the sixth word is spiritual. Now, each of these represents resilience strengtheners that we're going to talk about today. Now, on the far left-hand side of your paper, I want you to draw some representation of you. So it can be a stick figure, it can be the Pillsbury Doughboy, it can be a big round circle with an eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. So, but just something that symbolizes you. And I drew a stick figure, and you can't see it, of course. Oh, but anyway, I have mine ready to go. What happened after that lightning strike is a great example of social resilience. I instinctively knew that in order to get better, I needed to be connected to another human being. The opposite of, well, let's just call it depletion of social resilience, is isolation and loneliness. Loneliness kills more people every single year than cigarette smoke does. And we've really had to implement some very creative strategies to stay connected to other human beings during the pandemic. It's absolutely essential to our well-being. And I'd like you to just draw a circle around that type of social resilience and then connect it as if there's a current, there's a pathway, there's an energy stream going to you. So draw a line from social to you. The next type of resilience is physical. This one's a fairly easy one to strengthen. It's called movement. If you add 5 minutes a day, 7 days a week, no matter how fast or how slow you walk, you're going to strengthen your physical resilience. So draw a circle around that and imagine that there's a pathway, there's an electrical energy current that is filling and restoring you by connecting a line from physical to you. Now, with your permission, I'd like you to participate in a physical resilience strengthener. And it may feel silly at first, but no worries, just go along with it. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to kind of lean back in your chair and put your hands straight up over your head and look up and, make your fingers kind of do this. And then make the letter Y and look into the camera and go, ta-da! You've just strengthened physical resilience, because part of physical resilience is laughter. And laughter, you can't help but move your body when you're laughing. So draw a line, if you haven't already, to yourself, and let's go on to the next one. We are hardwired to react to threat with one of two emotions: rage or terror. And both of those are designed to keep us away from the threat, fight or flight. We can't not be afraid. We cannot not be angry. And those are not negative emotions. If we get stuck there, though, they can harm us. So draw a circle around emotional resilience and connect it to you. But here's how to strengthen it. We're going to go back to physical resilience to strengthen emotional resilience. If you're experiencing high anxiety, if you're experiencing high stress or anger or even discouragement as a result of some situation that you're currently in, take off your shoes and socks, walk outside, and literally ground yourself into the earth. Walk around in the grass, and it may take a few days before you feel a shift, but over time, that electromagnetic system that's inside of you that is overcharged and overstimulated, like my lightning strike, will eventually calm down as you walk barefooted in the grass. And it is remarkable and it is effective. And most of us are walking around in rubber-soled shoes. So on any given day, we cannot have access to a grounding mechanism that's right underneath our feet. So experiment with walking barefooted in your home and see if that makes a difference in strengthening your emotional resilience. The other thing that is super helpful with emotional resiliency is there's this wonderful hormone called oxytocin. And it is activated when you shake somebody else's hand, when you hug somebody. And guess what? We can't do that right now because of the pandemic. But we can actually produce our own oxytocin. And I'm going to demonstrate how. So let me take off my jacket. And you'll take your hands like this, make a cross, hug your shoulders. And then you brush firmly down to the end of your fingertips, release, and repeat. You do this 3 to 5 times and you're activating oxytocin. And it's amazing. And you can even do these firm brushes down your thighs and ankles and off your toes. But man, that has been a lifesaver for me because I live alone and I like my oxytocin. Yes. Let's go down to the next one. We have cognitive resilience. And when somebody's taken a sucker punch to the gut and they've experienced a trauma, oftentimes what happens is our brain shuts down and we're completely overwhelmed. We can't think straight. And when I give workshops for job searchers who have unexpectedly lost their jobs, they can't take in any information until we can help them get mental acuity, help them get into some level of focus. So I'm going to do one exercise real quick, which is you cup your hands and you look at your fingers and you take 6 breaths. And we're not going to take the time to take 6 breaths, but that's an exercise where you intentionally focus on something outside of the numbness that you experience. They say that when you experience an unexpected trauma, it's shock. You go into shock and your electromagnetic system that is you goes into hyperdrive. And so your brain stops working and everything goes to that place of freeze. So there's fight, flight, and freeze. So reactivating the cognitive resilience will strengthen you, circle it, and connect it to that image of you. Fiscal resilience. We live in a culture where we are encouraged to spend money we don't have. And we are in a culture where we don't save. And many of us got caught with our pants down when the pandemic hit because we had no cash reserves. And a significant portion of folks lost their jobs, at least temporarily, in the restaurant, service industry, hospitality. And without a cash reserve, there is scrambling time. So in fiscal resiliency, always have an emergency plan. If you run out of money, where are you going to go? But if you have money, how can you quickly raise $1,000 in cash reserves. That's for emergencies. So you can cut up those credit cards, you can live debt-free, and you have a whole lot more options. You know what? When somebody comes to me and they've missed 2 house payments, they've been out of work for 6 months, and they say, if you don't help me, if you don't show me how to find a job, I'm going to lose my house. That's a totally different campaign strategy than if somebody comes to me and says, I've got 2 years of net disposable income, and I have the time to choose wisely. So on this side, we're talking about stop the bleeding strategies. And on this side, we're talking about successful career transitions. The last resilience strengthener is spiritual. And many of you get these intuitive nudges that tell you what to do, and they're never wrong. That's an example of spiritual resilience. And one of the things that we build is to find a God that works, that loves you back. And if the concept of God is difficult for you, then find something greater than yourself that will restore you. And it could be a community of friends. It can be a cause that you feel called to be a part of. But what is it in that spiritual guidance that's going to be part of your restorative story? Draw a circle around that and connect it to you. Now, in summary, I'm going to give you several verbs under each one of these types of resilience strengtheners that are action steps. So go back up to social and write these 2 words down. Your job to strengthen this one is to connect and to love. Under your physical resilience, your job is to move your body and to ground that excess stimulus that's causing more and more of the trauma after the trauma event. Under cognitive, your job is to clear your head and focus on something positive. Clarify where you are in space. Learn. Under fiscal resilience, earn, contain, and then spend. Under spiritual, your action steps is to listen. And you can listen to that still small voice that directs you. You can listen to the wisdom of other human beings. You can pray and you can serve. All of those are part of growing your spiritual resiliency. So on that note, I'm going to call it a close and ask for your questions. So you'll have to unmute.
Perfect timing, Shary. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
everything makes so much sense.
Mm.
Anyone have questions?
And if you don't have questions, I'd love to hear from you of what one takeaway from this presentation will be helpful to you, or what was the most helpful part of this presentation?
I'll comment. I mean, I'm just amazed at how many very practical things you gave us in 20 minutes. I'm saying, wow. I mean, it was very touching and it was very practical. And it really reminded me of something that happened to me a few weeks ago. I lost my biggest client, and it was kind of a bizarre circumstance that led to it. And I was definitely in that cognitive space that you were talking about, where my brain just wasn't functioning right. And the very next day, I decided that I was going to finally do the studying and complete the studying that I've been doing for a long time to pass the 6 Sigma Green Belt certification. And I jumped into it and I did it. And well, I'll tell you what, that was a really constructive way to deal with what had happened. So
Good for you, Les. Good for
yeah.
you.
That kind of thing takes your mind off of you, right? It helps put your focus elsewhere.
Right.
Mhm, mhm. It's one of the reasons why the action step is to focus.
Shary, I like the way you made the connection to grounding yourself. I definitely think that's going to be a takeaway for me. I'm not one to walk in my bare feet. And I love that thought that might really help me
Mhm.
get grounded. I love that.
That's great. Thanks, Kathy.
You know, Shary, is with regard to the fiscal piece of it, my husband was in transition last year, and we have always been really, really, really diligent savers. And so having that ability to make a meaningful transition instead of stopping the bleeding was a very comforting place to be in, because I know he didn't, and I certainly didn't want him to take a job just to be taking a job. I wanted him to find something that he would really enjoy doing. And often that takes longer. And it did, but he did. And he's in a really, really good place. And so my mom started me when I was really little, and she said, save 10% of everything you earn. And, actually that's probably not enough these days, but anyway, your advice to have a cushion is just such a mental help.
Yeah, yeah. And good for your husband, and good for you for saving.
Thank you. He did the hard work with the finding the new job.
I think for me, one of the things taking the 6 and separating them out, like I always think of fight, flight, freeze. Those are the things I have to fight against. But thinking that my emotional brings my rage and terror, and that my cognitive brings my freeze, and figuring out different ways to intersect my, I call it my reptilian brain's response, my auto response. I'm not probably ever going to walk outside with my shoes off, but I appreciate the linkage of the senses with the ability to ground my excess stimuli. Like I do something like, someone annoyed me the other day and I looked for 5 red things, and it was like, okay, now I'm not paying attention to you, and I have something else in order to reduce the craziness that went on in between my ears after something came out of your mouth. And just being able to have the idea of grounding, the idea of putting these 6 together, and that my resilience and my wellness isn't just one thing. I can't think my way out of everything. It's doing 5 minutes a day in the different areas. I appreciate that.
And I appreciate you, Janet, for saying to focus on 5 red things. That's a wonderful tip. Thank you for that.
It really worked.
When you were a kid, did you go barefoot in the summer? Wasn't that like what
It
summer
was
was all about?
divine. Absolutely divine. Yes, yes.
And today it's like, ew, there's a rock.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions or thoughts? Harriet may join us in a minute, so I'm just kind of hovering over mute. But I mean, we have a few minutes left if anyone wants to add anything or share.
I just want to thank you, Shary, for the way you show up and the way that you help people. And this is a great way to start the morning.
Thank you, Les. Appreciate that. And just to let you know, I'm going to be launching a 4-week course on resilience starting June 1st. And this presentation was the beginning thoughts of that workshop that's coming up. So if you'd like more information, if you'd like to go more in depth in those action steps of connect, love, move, stretch, feel, ground, focus, clarify, earn, contain, spend, listen, pray, serve. Yeah, we're gonna dive deeper in those concepts. So join me.
Will you be sending us some information about that, Shary?
Yes, and if you want less, just private message me too, just to make sure I have your current address. I mean,
Okay.
email address. Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
And Shary's contact information, this is being recorded, so Shary's contact information will also be in that email. And you can listen to this again if you didn't get all of the notes that you wanted by going to our YouTube channel.
And will you send a link to that channel, Lisa?
We certainly will.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Well,
And
I
actually, I say we, but it's really Julie who does it.
Yay, Julie.
Yes.
Janet, did you want to say something?
was just thinking how slippery you are, Shary, in that you had me move away from my computer and take out a sheet of paper, which I had to find. But you took me outside of my usual world also. And, you know, like I drew my happy little, yay, Janet. But also like I took a second and now I get to look at this versus to have my external output on my computer. And way to go for I don't know what this is, paper and pencil. And so it is a different way of thinking and a different way of seeing it. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's a sneaky way of demonstrating physical resilience.
Excellent. Thank you, Shary, for doing this morning, as Les pointed out, so early in the morning. But it is an excellent way to get started. We have, I think it is 3 more breakfasts with the experts before we take our summer hiatus. Nancy Nix Rice is one of those speakers. She happens to be here this morning. She's going to be talking to us about how to look good on Zoom. Not that I need it, but if anyone wants to join us.
Excellent.
And when we reboot in September, if you have any thoughts or ideas or want to be a speaker, would love to have a conversation with you about that. All right.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Shary. And thanks everybody for being here this morning. Truly appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a great day.